This is the Bertucci A2S field watch, model number 11051. Bertucci offers over 30 models of field watches, some with sapphire crystals, mineral crystals, titanium cases, polycarbonate cases. Some have 100 meters of water resistance and others have 200 meters. There's even a model with a full lume dial. This particular model seemed to check a lot of the boxes of what a field watch should be, and it did it for a price point around $100 US. In fact, at the time of this video, you can find it on Amazon for $109 or ultimatefieldwatch.com, which is Bertucci's website, for $110. Hey everyone, welcome back to Eric's Everyday Watches. As always, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, please do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. It comes in this recyclable cardboard box with a Bertucci logo printed in black ink. It is a very basic, no-frills package. It does have some helpful information on the side, including contact information, email, and website address. It also calls out that the packaging was made and printed in the United States. On one hand, this is not a box that you will keep. In fact, I question whether or not it will hold up over time at all. This one already is a little bent out of shape from just having it shipped. But at the same time, it seems fitting that a field watch would come in a recyclable box, since traditionally wearing a field watch is an outdoors activity and caring about the environment seem to go hand in hand. Now, all of the watches that Bertucci makes uses a patented unibody case construction. The case on this watch is 316 stainless steel. I went for the stainless steel version since there's no metal bracelet, and I figured the weight difference is going to be marginal. The diameter comes in at 40 millimeters, and for a lug-to-lug distance, we have a respectable 49 millimeters. The entire case has a brushed finish to it, which almost looks more like a blasted finish. The only exception to that being that the case back has a polished finish. The edges are all nicely finished off and are smooth to the touch. The side of the case has a swoop to it, essentially acting as a crown guard at the 4 o'clock position. There is a substantial downturn to the lugs, giving this watch a very distinctive appearance and adding to the wearability. The unibody construction on this watch does make it look more industrial and rugged. And the round bezel portion of the case frames the dial nicely, and it also helps to actually protect the crystal. The crystal itself is set roughly 1 millimeter below the top of the case, and that is why I chose the mineral crystal option instead of sapphire. It's still going to scratch a lot easier than sapphire would, but at least with it offset, it might not scratch as easily. That's the theory anyhow. On back of the watch, there's a screw-down case back with, quite honestly, a lot of text. Very possibly too much text. Not only does it include the standard callouts of 100 meters water resistance, Japan movement, and stainless steel, but they also wanted to remind everyone they have a US patent on the case design. It takes a 626 battery and the model number, and the fact that the case is made in China. I'm not sure why that gets a call out. Oh, and don't forget about the picture of the dog Enzo. In my opinion, this case back could have been a lot nicer looking simply by leaving off some of the information and incorporating a little bit nicer typography. But fortunately, it's a part of the watch that you're never going to see, especially given the fact with the NATO strap covering it up. And just to call out the obvious, the unibody construction means that there are no removable spring bars between the lugs, meaning a NATO strap is your only option here. Inside, we have the Japanese Miyota quartz movement. Bertucci does not supply much information about which Miyota movement they use, only that it is a Miyota movement and it has 0 joules. The only information they do offer is that you can expect a battery life of 4 years. This watch includes a sign crown, which is always a bonus and nice to see. The crown at the 4 o'clock position is 6.5 millimeters in width and 5 millimeters in depth, which is a nice size for this case. It is easy to grip and pull out. Now this is a screw down crown, even though this particular model offers 100 meters of water resistance. Pulling it out to the first position stops the second hand and adjusts the time. Now let's talk about the dial. There are no applied elements anywhere on this dial, making this dial completely flat. Starting on the outside, we have a white minute track printed directly on the dial. At the 5-minute markers, we have lumed squares. And at the 12 o'clock position, we have a downward pointing triangle, which is also lumed. Inside of that minute track, we have our first set of Arabic numbers, 1 through 12, printed in white. Now these are not lumed. The Arabic numbers at the 4 compass points are larger, aiding in legibility and makes this dial extremely easy to read at a glance. Inside of that, we have a second set of Arabic numbers, 13 through 24, for military time, and these are much smaller in size. Again, printed in white. Because of the size of this, these are more for design aesthetics than actual use, in my opinion. Inside of that, at the 12 o'clock position, we find a Bertucci logo. And further down the dial, rather oddly placed at just below the center post, we have the words stainless steel and 100 meters, which seems to unnecessarily clutter the dial. And finally, at the very bottom of the dial, in ridiculously small mouse-sized text, we find Japan movement and super luminous. The dial itself is a flat black color with no texture or pattern to it, providing a high amount of contrast between the white numbers and markers. This dial has a very basic and utilitarian feel. Overall, I would say that this watch appears rugged and built to be your daily beater watch. The fence post style hands are white and incorporate lume into the center. The red colored second hand is the only pop-up color to appear on the dial, and it also has a small amount of lume incorporated into it. The second hand stops roughly 2 millimeters from the minute track, and it could be longer. The second hand hits the markers most of the way around, but it is slightly off in some areas. Now that's very common for quartz movements, and it doesn't affect the overall accuracy of a watch. It's actually a sign that the hands were applied by humans and not an automatic assembly line. All the hands offer a high amount of contrast against the black dial, which I believe was Bertucci's intent, to have form and function be of equal importance on this watch. The green color lume on this watch is simply impressive, especially on the hands, which seem to light up when exposed to the smallest amount of light. Now, in my everyday use, I did find that the lume on the minutes and the hour hands does last all night. Topping off that dial, we have a flat piece of mineral crystal. Now, while mineral crystal does scratch easier than sapphire, credit should be given to Bertucci here for thinking ahead and recessing the crystal a couple millimeters below the top of the case. Obviously, this does not improve the inherent qualities of mineral crystal, but it may help to protect the glass somewhat. The nylon strap is 22 millimeters wide at the lugs and 2 millimeters thick. There is heavy-duty stitching that runs down at both ends of the strap. The buckle and keepers are both stainless steel, and one of the keepers has the Bertucci name on it. Now this strap is thicker than my other NATO straps, and it does feel substantial. Initially, I was not a fan of the strap as it seemed too thick and it did not want to bend easily to my wrist. But I'm glad to say that after some initial wear, the strap does seem to give a little bit and now conforms to my wrist. The strap is long enough for my 7-inch wrist without having an extra strap which needs to double back and tuck in. I know some people will say that a field watch should technically have a lot of extra strap for those times when you're outside in the cold and you need to strap the watch around the outside of your jacket. But for me, that need does not exist, and I do not want the strap to be an extra 3 inches long. So let's go over the specs for this watch. We have a mineral crystal, a Miyota quartz movement, a diameter of 40 millimeters, a thickness of 11 millimeters, a lug width of 20 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug distance of 49 millimeters. Now let's wrap up by going over the pros and cons. For pros, aesthetics. It is a good-looking watch. The unibody construction means the spring bars will never fail on you. It is assembled in the USA, with parts sourced from other countries, of course. It's very legible with a high amount of contrast. You get 100 meters of water resistance, which is more than enough for day-to-day activities. The crystal is offset, and it does have good lume. Now for cons, you are limited to only being able to use a NATO strap. And the case back is simply cluttered with way too much text. And I know that's a very minor thing, but those are literally the only two cons I have here. So my final thoughts on this watch. Now the pros far outweigh the cons on this one, so this might come as a bit surprise to you. Even though I was initially drawn to this watch, my desire for it faded just as quickly. Now let me say there's nothing wrong with this watch, and if you choose to pick it up, you'll likely enjoy it for years to come. Personally, I can't help but think about that Bulova Hack Field watch I reviewed a couple months ago, and how that one just feels leaps and bounds ahead of this one. So why did I do a side-by-side comparison? Because that watch is priced north of $200 US. It's still very affordable, but it's literally twice the price of this one, making a direct comparison unfair. So do I think this Bertucci is worth the money? Absolutely. At $100, you cannot go wrong. I think the main difference is that Bulova Hack felt like such a high quality watch that I would never consider taking it on outdoor activities such as mountain biking or rock climbing. But this Bertucci, it feels like that was the intended purpose. And all the dings and scratches that it's going to collect during those activities, you're going to look back at those with fond memories someday. I think this Bertucci is meant to be an everyday beater watch. This has been Eric from Eric's Everyday Watches, reminding you to buy the watch that you love and don't pay any attention to what anybody else says or thinks. This is your watch collection. If you like this video, if you find it helpful in any way, please do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.